We all have our secrets. We just didn't get to yours yet. Oh, dear me. I'm terribly sorry. The Datsun 260Z, also known as the Fair Lady Z. It's one of the most stylish cars to come out of Japan in the 1970s. But is it any good? Should you care? Why? Let's find out, shall we? Datsun. Hi!
Here we are with anchors tying us to what we'll call home, even if the sight of it has not yet touched our eyes. But here we are and we're together, even if we are apart. And we're together when we're together. Something big is happening among us. It's not as if we don't have to deal with.
So welcome again to Tweed Jacket Reviews, and we've got a rather special episode today. Because it's Christmas and we have an appropriately coloured car today. This is a 1976 Datsun 260Z. Another very rare and wonderful car from Stuart's collection, who has just the most amazing sample of Datsuns and Nissans right way through from the 70s to the late 90s. So thanks, Stuart. Fewett. Before I get into detail about this incredible 1970s sports car, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and to leave a comment below. It all very much helps to spread the love of tweed jackets all over the internet. So the Datsun 260Z was introduced in 1974. It was only sold for 1 year in America, because they then went to the 280Z, but for the rest of the world the car lasted until 1978, when it was replaced by the Datsun 280ZX. Now that car, despite looking vaguely similar to a 280Z or 260Z, it didn't really share any body panels or anything like that. The engine though in this car, famous L engine Nissan Datsun, which was used from about 1969 all the way through to 1986, and it was in that C31 Nissan Laurel that I drove on Sensible Second-Hand Classics, which would have been back in August. One thing I don't actually know about this car, this is a 5-speed manual gearbox in here. The Americans had a 4-speed manual for some reason. This is a 5-speed manual. As to whether the 3-speed automatic was actually sold in this country, that I don't know. In Japan, this car was known as the Fair Lady Z, and the first 3 cars in this sort of sports series, the 240Z, the 260Z, and the 280Z, and the Fair Lady Z, are known collectively as the S30 series. Styling is, well, it's very reminiscent of a certain car that we had on Tweed Jacket Reviews at the beginning of last year, the Jaguar E-Type. That's not a bad thing though. I think it looks really great, and you know, in certain ways this really does remind me of driving an E-Type, because I have driven one with a 5-speed gearbox as well. This doesn't have as much power. It's about 165 horsepower in this car, although American versions of that 74 260Z was only sold for a year, went from 140 horsepower to 165 later on. The 240Z had started production in '69, and this was you know, an enlarged version of that engine, which is also in the Datsun 260Z that you might be seeing on the channel at some point. All synchro 5-speed gearbox, no power assisted steering like an E-Type. 0 to 60, it's around 8 seconds in this car. Top speed is about 127. This is actually a 2+2 version, although the rear seats do look a bit tight. They're not as tight as they were in that 2+2 E-Type. And so this has 11.8 inches of extra room in the wheelbase. curb weight of this car is around 1,200 kilos, so it's relatively light actually for such a sort of big car. The other thing I'm remembering from when I drove the E-Type is the nose being incredibly long and just being slightly concerned at junctions can kind of come along and nip it off for you, which wouldn't be too much fun. But it is very smooth. It's an overhead cam unit, 6-cylinder, and it makes an absolutely brilliant noise. I'm also remembering in this car the indicators on the other side, which is just standard practice of the older Japanese cars. That's just the way that they tended to be. Oh, there we go, I'm being let out around here, brilliant. Let's just go around this roundabout and see how it feels. Very, very sort of firmly planted steering. Loads and loads of feel, complete contrast to like a 260C. Absolutely glorious. I mean, the suspension is all independent in this car. It's actually reasonably compliant to ride. It's not too bad. I've had much worse from cars of this era. I like this 3-spoke steering wheel with the little padded horn push in the middle. One really weird thing is on the wiper stalk that's on the left, it's also the lights, which is a bit confusing because normally the lights are on the indicator stalk, but this is a little spindly thing, very reminiscent of you know, cars really of, I'd say, the 60s, I think. It's just such a joy to be driving around in a car like this. They're very, very rare cars. I think the numbers surviving in this country are in double digits. Obviously, I think they sold a lot more in America, but that'd be the 280Z really, more often than not. Loads and loads of torque in the engine. It's very quiet actually. It has a very different exhaust system, so you get much more induction roar on this than other cars I've driven with this engine. Oh, feel the power in this really quite well. It feels just very smooth and it's instantly accessible. Gearbox isn't too bad. It's quite a long throw, and it feels quite a long way away with these static seatbelts on. But it is pretty nice. Anyway, my fun's going to come to an end at some stage, and that stage will be when we go and park up somewhere and go and take a look at this car in a bit more detail.
Here we are with anchors tying us to what we'll call home, even if the sight of it has not yet touched our eyes. And here we are and we're together, even if we are apart. And we're together when we're together, something big is happening.
That was an awful lot of fun. I should really get used to that clutch biting point. Anyway, let's have a look at the more practical side of the 260Z, not that there's much to talk about, and have a look in the boot. I love the look and proportions of this car. It's wonderful. It's not so great when you're coming out of junction, so having such a long bonnet, but yes, the back is really stylish. It's actually a hatchback, a bit, again, like an E-Type. This spoiler, by the way, is completely original. It's actually made of plastic, and this is the original colour. Not the biggest opening, I think, but quite practical for a car of this type. The rear lights are interesting as well. These are twin reversing lights, and interesting number plate lights. This is actually the original plate from when the car was sold in the sort of Portsmouth area, Leon St. Fareham, in 1976. We peeled back this carpet here. We can see we've got original toolkit just in the corner there, and just underneath here there is the spare wheel, full size of course, and that's been with the car for a long time. This car's been in the same ownership for about 30 years, which is remarkable. And of course, just like the other cars in Stuart's collection, the exhaust looks absolutely wonderful. Again, moving down the side of the car, I'm going to actually get in the back of this 2+2 model. It's not going to be the most fun I've ever had in my life, but we'll try it anyway. Oh dear. Oh! Oh! Ooh. Yeah. Let's not stay in there any longer. I don't think I'm going to be able to stay in there at all. I mean, these two-stone seats are quite nice, but there really isn't any room for anybody who's not about 5'2" in the back, so we'll go round and get in the front. Stuart's told me the original owner of this car traded it in for a more conventional one because they found it hard to get in and out. Can't imagine why. Anyway, once you're inside here, it's very, very typically 70s. Everything is black. Black vinyl seats, black headlining, and a completely black dashboard. So utterly typical of this era for sports cars. The controls are actually a little bit more conventional than you might expect, apart from this interior light, which you turn on by pushing it down like that. We've got clock in here that's actually still working and using showing correct time. You can hear it ticking actually as well. Voltmeter, fuel gauge, temperature gauge, and oil pressure gauge. Just like in a lot of other sports cars, big rev counter, and then a speedometer here. The car's actually done over 150,000 miles, which is remarkable, really. Drive distance is pretty good. It reminds me of something like a Ford Capri sitting here. Very much sort of you know, flat, and you've even got a footrest here, which is pretty good. Gearbox feels quite good. The throw is quite long on it. It's very mechanical change because it's right down to the gearbox. There's no remote linkage or anything like that. Handbrake is quite light in this car. There is a bit of storage here, an ashtray, and a cigarette lighter just here. Heating controls are quite conventional. They're a lot less sort of fussy than some that you might get from some European cars of the year, actually. Radio actually is not too far away. This is the original Hitachi stereo for the car. And a rear defogger, as it calls it, just here. And the hazard light switch is just down there. It's actually reasonably straightforward. The thing is, when you get over to this side, it gets a little bit weird. The wiper stalk on the left, which is conventional for Japanese cars of this era, also has the lights on it like this, which yeah, is unusual. Little vents here, sort of round ones, like the ones they're trying to put into modern cars now, like Audis and MGs and things. Dashboard illumination just there. There's actually a trip reset button just down there too, which I won't touch because you know, I don't know if I'm allowed to do that. And just down next to the bonnet relief is also a fresh air pull on either side. Was one on that side too. Not much to talk about with this door panel. It is just kind of vinyl with a tiny little wood strip here, just tiny wood. There's actually only fake wood on the car, actually. There's nothing else. There are two releases for the door. There's this one, and then because this is a 2+2, there's also this one here, which I will use because my jacket is caught in the door. Let's not do that again. Although, as we've demonstrated earlier, you might not want to put anybody in the back who you're not you know, that friendly with. There's also a rear light just in the back there, which is a nice little touch. Let me see though if my secret mission documents fit in the glove box. The answer's no. I was hoping this glamorous 2+2 was going to be suitable for spy work, but it turns out it's not. At least they thought about one thing, which is that if you are sitting in a car with no air conditioning, obviously in other markets this would have had air conditioning. If you're sitting in the car in height of summer with no air conditioning with this vinyl black seat, there's actually these holes to try to ventilate the lower part of the back so you don't get too sweaty, although how those work if they're going to be really hot anyway, I don't know. In conclusion then, what do I think of the Datsun 260Z? It's interesting comparing this with a Jaguar E-Type, which we've also had on Tweed Jacket Reviews, just under 2 years ago, because they were available at the same time. I think though I slightly prefer this in some ways. It's a little bit easier to drive. I imagine this is probably going to be a little bit more reliable, and prices are a little bit lower. However, these are really, really rare cars, so trying to find one of these, particularly an example in this condition, might be a little bit difficult. Oh, dear me, I'm terribly sorry. You know, history isn't kind to people who play God. Thank you for watching this episode of Tweed Jacket Reviews. I source cars for people on a professional basis. To find out more, please visit the links in the description below. Thank you.
Us to what we'll call home, even if the sight of it has not yet touched our eyes. And here we are.